Recording now. Okay, we're going to call this January 21st Board of Selectmen meeting to order. And Bob Carlson, the first selectman. Also, we have Selectman Brett Bastriani, Selectman Nicole Porter, and Admin Finance Officer Suzanne Thero. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? As always, when we get to an agenda item, we'll be glad to have you comment after the Board of Selectmen discuss it. So on non-agenda items, nothing online, Sue? No hands up, perfect. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve minutes.
I will make a motion to approve two sets of minutes. The first one, December 17th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. The Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen special meeting held here at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, passes 3-0.
The second set of minutes is the Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen meeting held on January 7th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
Great. Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Are there any comments by either selectman? Okay, hearing none. Moving along, first selectman comments. I have some, excuse me, I have some correspondence I'm going to read, but I'm going to read it when we get to the to agenda item number 10, because they're about that voting ordinance. So I'll wait till I read them then after the Board of Selectmen discuss it. Just a couple of things that happened today on some more developments on this room. We are hoping to create a North Stonington Wall of Fame on the back wall behind Gary Anino. I got the plaque today from the original Lions, 1967 Lions organization that was found in somebody's attic. It's got some names that we all would recognize, and that'll be one of the first things that goes up, as well as some of the things we took down in the middle school, some of the 1950 building committee and the 1960 building committee and so on. We have a piece of this floor when it was a gymnasium, things like that. So we want to create that on that wall. So when people come in to vote or people come to a meeting, they'll be able to see some of the history that we have in the town. So other than that, the first thing on the agenda this evening, number 7, is appropriation request for North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company. Is anyone from the fire company going to present this, or do you want me to just use, Joe, I see your head. Do you want me to use what we were sent by the chief? Well, if you're not familiar with the email, I can just do it. Okay, so in your packet, so when the fire company got a new service truck this year and we sold the other one at auction, we said to them when we bought the service truck, because the price had gone up, but we were able to buy it at the same price but not outfitted the way they wanted, that once we sold the old service truck, which we did recently at an auction, we could use some of those funds to retrofit this truck with lights and so on. What so the appropriation is for $7,134. In your packet, there is copies of text, emails, quotes, totaling what the fire company's already spent, they'd like to be reimbursed for, and what it would cost to finish, as they call it, the uplifting of the truck. What would happen tonight if we approve this, and I would rate an appropriation request up for the Board of Finance, and at their meeting on January 29th, I will ask for this amount of money as an appropriation. Being that it's $7,134 would not go to a town meeting, can be approved by the Board of Finance if we approve it first. So are there any questions about this appropriation? Anything that you'd like to see that you didn't see? I'll be glad to discuss. And if there's any comments about this after we discuss it, you're more than welcome to comment. Anything from you, Nicole? Are you good with what you saw, or Brett? Okay. Is there any other discussion? Is anyone in the audience that'd like to, Gary?
Doesn't work there. Gary Hino, 91 Main Street. I'm fully supportive of what the fire company needs, but we should be cognizant of how many times we count these windfalls from the sales. Because at the last meeting, we agreed, or I thought the Board of Selectmen agreed, to put this together with some other stuff they were selling to go towards the mini excavator. So are there any checks?
The mic is not working.
Why not? It's lit.
You
Maybe
can't.
maybe not talking directly into it.
If I get any closer, I'll be swallowing.
Yeah, but they might not be able to hear it up there.
Can you hear me now?
Barely. Gary, I know your voice and I can barely hear you.
What
So
if we sat down and used,
All right, I'll sit down.
all of you guys are faint, FYI.
Oh,
So I just want to make certain that we're not counting these things over and over again. So the
So we're
sale of the brush truck went for 16 or 18, depending on whether you include the buyer's premium or not. So that is money to the good, but we can only count it once. So
no, agreed, and it won't be counted again when we talk about the excavator. We also have all the items that we have at the transfer station to sell once that truck comes in, so. And there's quite a bit more than just this. This is a small part of I think we came up with about 100 and, I don't remember how much it was,
So maybe this
130,000.
question is to Suzanne, but can we keep sort of a tally? Somebody's got to have the advocates of what's coming in. and
Oh,
what's
we
going
are
out.
keeping a tally because this is money that has to come out of the undesignated fund, so we are keeping, and that money that went in from the sale had to go into the undesignated fund.
No, but at the last meeting, there was a long discussion about the mini excavator, which I also support. And there was a discussion about the money came in from the sale. We had other items coming in. I just want to make sure that we're not claiming that windfall a couple of times in a couple of places, because ultimately we'll end up with a gap.
Got it. Good news is you don't like to keep old inventory and the trucks all get sold.
Well, we can only sell it once, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. Jim?
Jim Holdridge, Winnebago Hill. I'm under the impression that when you sell a piece of equipment that the town owns, the money goes back into the town treasury, not in a designated fund for something else.
It goes into the undesignated fund. And the only way it can come out of that is by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance approving the appropriation. So it has to go back, and that's the check and balance.
Okay, and that goes to a town meeting as well?
Only if it's over $20,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, so hearing none, all's in favor of us approving this, and then I would send the appropriation to the Board of Finance for their approval or disapproval. Say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay.
I just want to make a comment that has absolutely nothing to do with my vote. But I did want to just recognize our fire company. I had the unfortunate situation.
Guys, you got to work on your mics. Can't hear anything.
Can you hear me, Winona?
Barely.
Everything's
Yes.
turned up as much as
Yeah.
we can.
It's super loud within the room, so. I'm
So there's something not coming through the meeting. I don't know. There's some other folks on here. Can anybody else hear better than what I seem to be, or is it just me?
This is Heath. I can hear pretty well. Nicole was a little more quiet than Gary, but overall, I just turned my volume up on my laptop, and that seemed to help.
Winona is.
Pretty
that-
low for me.
Who's that last comment? I'm sorry.
That's Mike.
Okay.
So Bob, we can hear you the best. I could not hear Nicole, Gary, or the second gentleman, and Nicole, you were pretty
Try
quiet.
the other mic. So these wires have been getting stretched, and some of them are just not the same.
Yeah, I can hear
Is
Brett.
is that any better?
That is great, Nicole.
Yeah, it's the microphones.
Okay.
themselves.
It's good.
And that one's being stretched too, so we might want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you, Winona. I just wanted to publicly thank our fire department for their very quick response on a very cold, scary night. So Joe was one of the first to arrive in my driveway, and they were fantastic. So thank you very, very much publicly. Had nothing to do with my vote.
Suzanne? So who, the original motion was who?
I think you made it, and I think did I second it? Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Okay, if there's nothing else, moving along to steep grant discussion. So we did get a notice from the state that they are going to have another steep grant opportunity. We received it on the 9th, which is last Thursday. Excuse me, the Thursday before last, and it has to be in by February 20th. They're looking for projects that are basically shovel-ready projects, things that have already been designed, quoted out, and so on. What we have so far is we're going to have quoting for this room that we want to, the makeover we want to do in this room to make it more of a meeting space than it is now. Also, the parking lot outside, which we designed for the last steep grant, but it did not get approved by us, not the state. And that's a 45-car parking lot on that side of the building. There's a parking lot across the street that we did for the school that is Millings right now. We want to turn that into a asphalt parking lot with lines. Alan Ladd, the foreman, has a pipe project he wants to do up on, I'm not sure if it's Alan on, I think it might be Ruderman, I'm not sure. And the last thing is, and these are all things that we'll have pricing for and design work done. And the last thing I think is something at Alan, if you're there, something in the transfer station, I believe, with the retrofitting for the new canisters that are coming in. Is he on, Suzanne?
Yes.
Okay, did I leave something out?
Yeah, it was just a couple of pads outside the transfer station doors with the new container setup. We'll be able to roll them on too easily and keep the wheels in good condition. And it was Hangman Hill for the pipe job, and Ruderman I'm getting a second quote on.
Okay, so the way this works is if the Board of Selectmen decide at our next meeting, this is what we want to apply for, we can apply for up to $1 million worth of work. It's a 20% match. So if we were to max out the full million, which I don't think we would, the town would pay $200,000 and the $800,000 of the work would be paid by the state. We're eligible for this because we were on the disaster, the municipality list that was in
The distress.
the distressed community, I'm sorry, from 2 years ago. We're still able to use that. This town, the size of our town can use it. You have to be under 25,000 people. So we qualify there. We have received our last 2 steep grants. So the process would be, we'd approve it to go to the steep grant to be approved. If it gets approved, it goes back to the town, goes to the Board of Finance for an appropriation, then goes to a town meeting for an appropriation. We cannot do this without many approvals along the way. There may be some other project that comes out of the woodwork between now and February 20th, but we do need time to get these quotes together. Anything that's just an idea right now is probably not going to happen, not in this steep grant. Is there discussion?
It's accurate that we have now since fallen off of the distressed town list, correct?
Yes, but once you're on it, you have the next 5 years,
5
you can
years.
use the fact that you're on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it just, as reading through it, I noticed that we're in the opt-in eligible, which that wasn't where we were before. So we do need to submit an opt-in request
Correct.
prior. So we can do that. We should make a motion to do that. So then we can work on all the programs.
Okay. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to submit their opt-in request to the state for the STEEP program.
Okay.
I'll
So-
second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. As far as discussion goes too, and so if you're in the audience, you don't understand it. We can be approved for this money and we don't have to take it. And once you're approved, you don't have to do the project. You just not decide that you don't want to take. We approved to get it. If we do the projects, then it's reimbursed. So we don't have to, we have to spend the money to get the 800,000 back. but we do not have to do the project. So we can go through the process and decide that at the end of it, it just didn't make sense to do it. The town didn't want to come up with, we'll say, $200,000 to do $1 million worth of work. You could have we could put the projects out to bid and find out if it's a year and a half from now that the pricing is no longer adequate to what we put it in as when we applied for it. And that can happen. The town's responsible for the 20% match, but also anything that's over what the steep grant awarded the town. So if we got awarded, we'll say $800,000, and now it's $1.2 million to do these projects, the town would have to pay the $200,000 for the match plus the $200,000 overage. When you get your approval, that's what you're approved for, is just that. So let's vote unless there's any other comment before we vote. Gary?
Are we just voting on the opt-in,
Just
not the
opt-in.
steep grant?
Correct.
So if you remember, the parking lot, I'm not gonna talk about across the road, but the one for here, I opposed when the draft POCD was submitted to the state. And the town planner said it could be opened anytime. And I opposed it because we had countless meetings with the people of the village. And this was never discussed at any public forum. It just got inserted into the POCD, I assume by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm a little concerned that now we're talking about a parking lot here. And I know this is NIMBY, it's in my backyard. What is the permitting process to do this? Are you gonna have to do a site plan and just like everybody else in town,
Yes.
public hearings?
Well, in order to do the project, yes, we have a site plan and we can quote it and send in for a steep grant and get that approval. If we get the approval, we don't have to do the project until we go through a process. Yes.
No, but there'll be public hearings on this particular.
We can have public hearings.
No,
But Susan-
will there be public hearings? Because there were no hearings to date when it went into the POCD. Even though you gathered all of us together multiple times to talk about what we wanted in our community, it just went in without any public discussion. So are we gonna allow the public to comment on this in the permitting process to make another parking lot? You got plenty of pavement here. What you lack is the landlord standing up and saying, your parking's over there. We're not building another lot for you right next to your building.
Can I just clarify, are we talking about additional parking right outside
Yeah,
this?
45 car parking lot
Yeah,
that would go around the greenhouse. It was the same plan we had at
Yeah,
the steep
okay.
grant last year.
nothing, we're not touching or redoing anything
Nothing
on
new,
that side. It
nothing.
was just,
Just
to
like I said,
allow
we'll-
people-
We'll probably refinish the parking lot that's on that side. We will. It's actually in the budget. But not as far as not moving it, reimagining it, bringing it closer to the building, none of that. It's just, this is what we're looking to do.
So essentially, we're creating parking closer in addition to the parking that's not being used right now.
So this room is used now for different uses than it used to be used. And the parking now is down there. Everyone enters from here for the most part. It would make sense to have parking closer for voting purposes, for meeting purposes, and actually even for the tenant that uses the school, rents out the 2-story wing.
Talk to the neighborhood before you start paving.
So we can talk to the neighborhood, Gary, and it can be a public meeting, which it would be, but the entire town is at a public meeting, not just the village.
And that's fine. What I was concerned about was it went in the POCD after we had all those community get-togethers, and it was never mentioned. It was just put in. We never got time to push back on it back then. And then we were told we could revisit it at any time, and now I'm hearing you're going for a grant for it. So I'm feeling a little,
So a year ago, this was part of the steep discussion over a year ago. Same exact parking lot, same design, same everything.
I think we had the same discussion a year ago, but that's okay, you and I.
But it can't happen unless the town agrees to make it happen, right? We just can't to make a parking lot that I have to go
Well,
through
that's what I
planning and
wanted to hear.
zoning.
You're gonna go through zoning.
Well, I
you're
have to
gonna
go through
normal
planning and
set-
zoning.
You're gonna have normal setbacks, just like any other zoning requirement in town. You guys have get no special treatment on this.
Can you use that mic? I'm sorry.
I thought it was loud.
We're getting word from,
you are to us, just not online.
I apologize, but I mean, obviously, we've struck a nerve with me.
with you.
Clearly.
And it's not a coincidence you might be the closest neighbor that lives next to the parking lot.
Yeah, and you know, it's fine to hear the kids singing and playing. The screaming sometimes gets a little rough, and I try not to pay attention. I assume they're well supervised and the screaming's normal. But now we're talking about more impervious surface when we have impervious surface already existing that we don't use for the same facility. And it's because we don't manage as a landlord the egress from that parking to the places we rent it out. That's the selectman's job as the landlord to say, here's your building, here's your parking. Not, here's your building, we'll build you another parking lot. I'm good, Bob, but expect more heated debate.
Thank you.
Would ask for anything else.
Carl?
Carl Johnston, 8B Ruderman Road. Just a quick question. Your 5 or 6 projects that all total $800,000. If you can you cancel at any time 1 or 2 of the projects and still apply for the steep? Or once you get the steep, you have to spend the whole money?
So if we get the secret, we have to do all the projects. We can't do a portion of them. We can do them all or do none.
So if one is not approved, or they do not like one and it's
Well,
prohibited,
they usually approve the entire grant or don't approve. It's all part of the same grant. It's multiple projects within one grant.
right, but how about the townspeople?
What
Say the
about-
townspeople don't want one of them objects. That drops the whole project.
It would, yes.
And we have until February.
February 20th to submit it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't hear back until probably April or May if we got approved. But then there's then, as Gary was just saying, then there's a process before we can do that. And planning and zoning is involved in that process. Anything else?
So clearly, we're not going to be able to have any kind of a town hearing or any.
No, we're just, we can apply for the grant. We don't have to take it. So we can apply for the grant.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other things on the list that we really need to do, things that Alan has planned already that are going to end up coming out of the budget, and why not add them to the steep grant? I'm just concerned if there's this much concern about that additional parking lot. Is that something that we put aside so that we can make sure that all the other projects do go forward?
So the thing is, we never know when a steep grant opportunity is going to come
Yeah.
about, which it is now. So if we could do this, we can keep the parking lot out and then use the money that we saved from not doing the other
To
projects.
do the parking lot and vet it out in the future.
Could do that. It could not, we could not put it into the secret application if we're worried about it.
So I know we cut this out last year, to your dismay, because we went with some of the projects here and for the school. But I am a little concerned that if we keep it in like that, and the town ultimately votes that they don't want the parking lot, then we lose out the opportunity for the whole $1 million or whatever we put in for. Is there a way to get clarification from the state that if one part of that project falls off, whether we can go forward with the other projects on that list?
So why don't we do the vote for the opt-in, and then before we finalize what it is that we're going to apply for, we'll have that information.
That, I think that'd be super helpful moving
Okay.
forward.
Jim?
Would it be all helpful to have a meeting to find out what the townspeople want, instead of just what the selectmen want? And then go forward with a list, because like I say, you drop one, you lose them all. And then if there's one that's controversial, you probably don't want to attach it to that pile of money, because you may not get anything.
The problem with it is the quick
The
turnaround. So
timeline is
we
not going to
talked
work.
It
about-
wasn't a quick turnaround 6 months ago. Why did we wait till the last minute?
Because you don't know about the steep until it comes out. So we were unaware it was coming. Usually they come out in September. It didn't come out in September. We didn't know if it was coming out. It came through and they give you a month turnaround time. Now, I will tell you, I've talked to the rec commission over the years. I talked to a lot of the different committees and said, hey, if there's projects your committee's doing, the residents want, get those ready. So when a steep grant comes out, we can be ready to go with it. Unfortunately, some of those groups, we don't have that information ready to go.
Right, but I think that if anything's controversial, you should find another way to fund it and take it out of this pot.
So I
And
think
that
that's
way-
what we're gonna,
And that way, you don't lose the lion's share because you screwed up and went forward with something that's not going to fall.
And we will clarify that to make sure that if we apply for 800,000 in one project we don't want to do we lose the other 550?
and then we can vote on it at the next.
Exactly. Thank you, Jim. Okay. Any other discussion about the steep grant? Okay, hearing none. Review the purchasing policy. This is,
We need to vote. vote to
Oh,
opt,
oh,
to
So
do
we
the
didn't.
opt-in,
All
right?
those in favor?
Yeah,
All
that
in
was our-
favor of opting in for the secret, say aye.
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 Okay. So we'll at least do the opt-in, Suzanne, and then we'll develop what we want to go for in a grant between now and then.
Okay.
Thank you. Purchasing policy, Brett, I'm going to let you do this because this is, you wanted to bring this up, so.
Yeah, and so the purchasing policy, basically, we probably should revisit it once a year or so as we look into it. But the reason I wanted to bring it up was something that happened on another board where they did get 3 quotes as we asked our employees and committees to do, but they never included the shipping in those. And it was an object that was $6,000. I think shipping ended up being $3,000. So I would just like to put in our purchasing policy when we put those quotes and we get those bids, that they include any kind of shipping or handling in there. So that I would think that would be under the policy statement. We could do it under B, where it's $15,000 to $20,000 and 3 written quotations or bids, and put in to include shipping and handling or any other excess fees.
Do you want a motion to put that in tonight? Is that what you're hoping to do? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a basic one.
Well, I don't mind discussing that, but I think we also should discuss the level of the dollar amounts, because I think that the increase in the price of goods to buy just keeps going up, and I don't know if $1,500 is the right number anymore. Nor I think we have the highway department at 4,000 or 4,500. So I think we might want to look at those as possible increase in those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I'm not personally in favor of changing that. So all we're asking when it's 1,500, you don't have to get multiple bids, and it's 15, you just get 1,500 to 20,000, you just get 3 written quotes or bids. And if you can't get those, you write that in. I just think it gets us to make sure we are looking for pricing. If you wanted to up the 15 to a slightly higher number, I guess
So I'd like to go to 2,000 on the 1,500 to 2,000, and then take the highway department and go from 4,500 to 5.
I think that's reasonable.
I'm fine with that.
So if we motion to raise that number from 1,500 to 2,000, the highway department from 4,500 to 5,000, and to add the shipping fees must be included in the overall price, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll motion that.
Can I just clarify, in going up to the 2,000, let's say we can find a snow blower for $2,000 or just shy of 2,000, but with shipping and handling and all of that, it's going to end up being 2,800. Is all of that rolled into? So the final price is what has to meet the 2,000, not the actual piece of equipment and all of the tax and delivery is
Because
additional.
ultimately it's the cost of the taxpayer, right? So the taxpayer is paying the 2,800. So
Yeah.
yes, I would think that's what you meant, right? Include the shipping in
Yeah,
the total price.
Okay,
Because it's the total cost is how we should look at it.
okay.
So I've made that motion to raise the numbers and to add the shipping.
Now, second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll just make note of that, Suzanne.
I'll update that.
Thank you. Okay, voting ordinance. I've not heard anything about this in the last few days. Okay, with that said, so I think what we're gonna do is I have some emails I need to read. I have a text I need to read into the record. But I thought the best thing would be to have Selectman Mastriani's bringing this forward, have him explain it first. Then I will read in what was sent to me today to read into the record, ask if there's any public comment. And then we'll discuss it. Just to know, there's no voting on this evening. It's strictly a discussion item on our agenda. We will not be voting yes or no on this. But I think we do want to make sure when we're changing an ordinance, we have to make sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is and look at all factors, how it affects the town. And ultimately, I think we all here for the same reason, do what's best for the town. So with that said, let's discuss this evening. We might even discuss it at a second meeting before we actually come to a vote. But
And can I just want to review the process, right? So we would have the discussion. We would vote to move it forward to a town meeting anyway for an ordinance change to take place, and the town would then be able to
Yes.
vote on what they thought.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Yeah, it wouldn't just be us.
okay.
Thank you, Nicole. for clarity.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I want to clarify a few things first, that this was never intended to vote on tonight, but to open up that discussion. And this has been something that has been kicked around for years, that we talked about, in the public. I also want to clarify, this isn't a Republican thing, a Democrat thing. It's not coming from the RTC, as a lot of the social media posts have put it. It's from me as a selectman, me as someone that's been involved in the community for over 16 years, standing outside the voting booths every election cycle for those 16 years, talking to residents. And the premise of it is, to me, as Americans, our number one privilege is voting. And the way the voting is set up now, and I should clarify, there's two that I'm bringing forward. One is for the Board of Finance and one is for the Board of Education. I'll start with the Board of Education one. The way voting works now is, if you want to, I have a sheet. So let me just let people know, in town, we have 957 Democrats, 1,140 Republicans, and 1,789 unaffiliated voters in our town. And what a lot of people don't understand, and I've talked about it for years out front, when people they're coming in to vote and they think they're voting for the people on the ballot, which they do, they mark that down. They say who they're voting for, but ultimately the way this voting is set up is geared to the two-party system, but it's geared in a way that, if you look at the Democrats, for instance, we'll start there, the nominees are picked by no more than 20 people to be the nominees for a major board like the Board of Education. Those members are endorsed, they are put on the ballot. On the Republican side, the Republicans have a caucus where up to the 1,140 Republicans can come vote for who they believe should be their nominee. And then those two candidates are put on the ballot as nominations. You can petition on as an unaffiliated or a Republican or a Democrat to be on the ballot outside of that, where you'd have to, I believe it's about 5% of the voters I don't have that exact number on there, and you can be on there. Where the interesting part is, when you go to vote, you can only pick 2 members to represent you as the public to the board, when there's 4 spots available traditionally on our election cycles. One thing to clarify too, that's been out in the public, the Board of Ed is not a balanced board. It is not, there's nothing in state statute that makes it a balanced board, nothing in our ordinances that make it a balanced board. So also, when there is a vacancy on that board, both parties can run for that vacancy. They can put up candidates for that vacancy. So it could be a split of a 5-3 board. There's a lot of misconception out there that says the Board of Education has to be a balanced board or is a balanced board. It is not. So that is something that really needs to be clarified. And that's the reason for this whole change, is that one seat is a contested seat always when there's a vacancy. The other 4 seats are never really contested. Once you make it out of nomination, you're pretty much on the board, voted on by 20 people or 1,000 people to be that nominee. So what I'm proposing is the other option within state statute. It's option 9-204B. And this relates to our community, and I'll read it. It's the optional alternative system for towns with 4-year terms for the Board of Education, notwithstanding the provisions of any general statute or to the contrary in any town which provides for 4-year terms for members to be elected to the Board of Education and whose legislative body adopts the provisions of this section by charter or ordinance, and the number of members to be elected is odd or even, any elector may vote for all of that number. So that means they can vote for all 4. And the persons receiving the greatest number of votes shall be elected, except that when the number of members of any one political party would be elected without regard to section 9167A exceeds the maximum number as determined by said section, then only the candidates of such political party with the highest number of votes up to the limit of such maximum shall be elected. The next highest ranking candidates not from such political party shall be elected up to the number of places to be filled in such election. Each political party shall have the right to nominate as many persons as there are vacancies on the board, and all those names shall be placed on the ballot. So in summary, what that means is each party could technically put up four members if they want to, if the vacancy is there. They can endorse unaffiliated to run. But the biggest part, in my biggest push, is to allow the public to actually vote for 4 members to the board, which represents the community, the feelings, and it also creates an area where we are beholden to our residents. If they don't like how we're voting on something, or they disagree, they can vote us out of office. Right now, the system isn't geared to that. It's not geared to really the 1,789 unaffiliated. We're potentially disenfranchising 789 unaffiliated and 98% of the Democrats, the way this is set up. I'm not saying that we need a majority of one board or another. There are caveats in this where minority representation can be greater than the state allows. It just can't be less. So we can say, as Preston does, no more than 4 members from one party. We can put that in. My biggest premise is allowing the public to vote for all 4 members. So I really want to clarify, this isn't a party-based thing. It's a thing for the public to be able to vote for the people that represent them. And also allows us to be held accountable. So I've been involved in 3 ordinance changes for voting. One in 2016 that changed the drop down from the first selectman to the selectmen. And that was done in a bipartisan way. We worked with Republicans and Democrats to have that done. And then the last one in 2021 was to allow all your votes to count for the selectman spot. It's the same thing. It's giving the public the right to vote. So that is the Board of Ed one. If you guys have questions on that, I can move to the next one and we can discuss it at the end.
So why don't you move to the next one and we'll discuss them both.
Okay. The next one is one that actually just kind of came forward. And it is based on a House bill from June 2nd of 1955. And what this one says is it sets the terms of the Board of Finance. But the biggest part is at such election, let's see, at such election, no elector shall vote for more than 1 member of said board for the same term. So that means if, for instance, this year, there's two members up on the Board of Finance. We are only allowed, because of this act in the state, they made this a state law back then, not even just about North Stonington, which I found interesting. So I don't know who lobbied the state to have that done, but it was done. Where we can only vote for 1 member for two people going onto the board. So for instance, without a change to this, there's board members on there doing a great job right now that would not be able to be endorsed by more than one political party or a political party that is, for instance, I'm talking about Carl Johnson right now, who's sitting here. He is an unaffiliated voter that was endorsed by the Republican Party, but it was during a vacancy period where you can vote for two members of that party. So it falls into almost the same thing as the Board of Education. During vacancies, you can vote for that member. Here, you would only be able to vote for one member that's running from each party would only be able to put up one candidate for that spot when there's two spots available. And the Board of Finance is also not a balanced board. So you're not getting true representation from the public of who should be on that board. So I did reach out to Representative Howard. He had the legislative aide look into this and research it for me. There hasn't been any changes since this, but an ordinance in town, since we run by state statute, could change that. And what I would suggest on something like this is the same thing, that we are allowed to vote for all members to be that are being elected for that board. So it's very similar. One is the Board of Education is a separate voting method allowed by state statute. And the other one is to put an ordinance in to change this special act from 1955. And like I said, this is to open up the discussion. There's other things we could put in, because I know some people are saying it's a party issue. It's trying to get one party in control. No, it's about letting our representation happen from the residents and not from a select group of people.
Okay. Nicole, before I start reading all the correspondence I have on this, do you have any comment? Okay.
I'm going to hold off for just now.
Okay. Let's see if we can start. I'll start with the text. I'll identify who sent it. First one is Brian Rathburn. He could not be here tonight. His text reads, I say the system we have now works fine for our town. No need to change it. Most people I know who are independents just don't want people to know which side they favor. Not sure why the board brought this up. I was hoping to attend, but may try to hear it on my computer, although I won't be able to comment, as you know. Last comment, don't fix what ain't broken. That was Brian Rathburn. Next, person from Jamie Toll Wixel, member of the Board of Education. Hi, Bob. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend the Board of Selectmen meeting this week because I'm teaching my night classes. I would hope that you would read this statement for me. Dear First Selectman Carlson, I am writing to express my deep concern regarding the proposal from the Republican Party chair to eliminate the long-standing split Board of Education. As a current BOE member and educator, I strongly oppose the idea, as our balanced board has been a key factor in our effectiveness. I take great pride in the work we have accomplished together, navigating challenges such as the pandemic, budget constraints, and administrative turnover, because of mutual respect and collaboration amongst members from both parties. Where we have had our differences, we consistently come together to find solutions that prioritize the education and well-being of our children in our town. In a time when divisive political rhetoric has disrupted educational systems across the country, I believe North Stonington has remained a beacon of cooperation and excellence, earning recognition as a school of distinction. Our current system is not broken. We must continue to focus on what matters most, putting our children's education above politics. Thank you for your attention on this important matter. Next, William Ricker, who is the chairman of the Conservation Commission. I am against any attempt to change our current working system of balanced boards and commissions. As the Democrats and Republicans struggle for power and control on each side of the center, a healthy two-party system remains important. One, it restricts extremes in either direction. Two, it allows all citizens to run for election, not a select few from one side or the other. Three, a two-party system gets more people involved in the community. Four, eliminates a one-party control and therefore one singular voice presented on issues of community importance. Our balanced boards have been working well with differences of opinions often expressed. This is exactly what is needed in our democracy. The old adage, if it isn't broke, don't fix it, comes into mind. This attempt to restrict two-party representation on balanced boards appears to be a power grab to squelch opposing opinions and results votes. Next, Brian Burdick from the Board of Education. Also said he would not be able to attend this evening. I am writing to emphasize the importance of maintaining a balanced and representative board rather than one that could disproportionately favor one party. A well-balanced board where diverse viewpoints are heard and considered is essential for ensuring that the decisions made reflect the needs and interests of all members of our community. By maintaining the current structure for the Board of Education, we can continue to foster collaboration and unity because our balanced board ensures a collaborative environment where decisions are made in the best interest of all, rather than being influenced by the priorities of one political party or ideology. This encourages unity, reducing polarization, and the decision-making process, also ensuring that the board members' balance promotes comprehensive decision-making, bringing together a range of perspectives from different political and ideological and community backgrounds. This leads to more thoughtful, well-rounded decisions that address the diverse needs of our students, our teachers, and our staff in our community. A balanced board is likely to be swayed by short-term political goals, ensuring, I like to use that word a lot, that decisions focus on long-term educational outcomes, providing stability and long-term focus. It promotes continuity and stability in governance, which is vital for implementing effective and sustainable policy and reforms. With a balanced board, each decision is subject to scrutiny from the board's spectrum of viewpoints, ensuring that no one political party can dominate or skew decisions. This promotes the accountability and better aligns policy with the public interest rather than party agendas. And by prioritizing special over party representation, a board can minimize partisan influences on policies. This allows the Board of Education to focus more on what student needs and academic excellence than on advancing a particular political agenda. That's very truly yours, Brian Burdick. As I said, he's a member of the Board of Education. Next, Tula Balistracci, the chairman of the Democratic Town Committee. The big problem we have has nothing to do with the ordinance. The real issue is civic engagement. Changing the ordinance does not increase participation. If anything, it will create more problems. An ordinance change was done a few years ago, and that changed how we vote for the selectmen. It did not increase the number of interested candidates. If anything, now it prevents people from running because they don't want to take someone else's seat. Changing how we vote is a slippery slope. We should err on the side of caution and really do some research on the ramifications. Just because something sounds like a good idea doesn't mean that it has positive results. The reality is a change will deter people from getting involved. How we vote for the Board of Education candidates is working. What we need to fix is how to get people to participate. Anyone can run for a position regardless of affiliation or lack of affiliation. People who just don't want to. Changing how we vote does not translate into increased participation. People do not attend meetings. People do not show up to vote. People are not knocking down our doors to be on ballots. We don't need more barriers. It's a struggle to find candidates as it is. If people have to compete, campaign, and bring attention to themselves, they're not going to get involved. We have a lot of vacancies right now. Some are appointed seats and people still don't want them. When it comes to our kids' education, the Board of Education budget is the only makes sense to have balance to facilitate working together with a powerful struggle that is what's best for the town. Respectfully, Tula Balistracci, And the final letter, this is from Board of Education, Judy Main. I would like to speak about the ordinance change Selectman Mastriani is presenting. After discussing this with the public on numerous occasions, this is not something I can stand behind. It is my understanding that Selectman Mastriani has decided to present this change on his own. The current way we vote gives the town a balanced board. Selectman Mastriani states that at the last meeting that there is no way for an independent or unaffiliated to win. I respectfully disagree. They can be endorsed by the RTC or the DTC, but if we have an abundance of candidates to fill the boards, as this ordinance change alludes to, this would not happen. When they petition to get on the ballot, they could win by a number of votes. I have looked at the last 3 elections in the town based on the numbers of people that are not voting, not party voting. I also researched Board of Education voting in Connecticut, and according to the state statute 9-204, when the number of members to be elected for the same term is even, no elector shall vote for more than half the number. Selectman Mastriani states that the state statute 9-204B, if the number of the board members is so chosen is 8, such town shall elect 4 members to hold office. This does not state that we would vote for 4, simply that the 4 highest vote getters would take seats. We need to make sure we are following those state statutes and not one that fits those changes proposed. I am not disagreeing with Selectman Mastriani that there is a statute that could support this change. I am simply saying that there is also a statute that does not. Anyone not party endorsed who is on the ballot can also win a seat. It has been mentioned that people in the town party vote. There are currently 3,946 registered voters, 957 Democrats, 1,140 Republicans, and 60 independents, and 1,789 unaffiliated. Based on the current numbers, the registered voters broken down by affiliation, this would negate the theory of party voting. However, if we still use the party voting theory as a basis for this, why would this change? As in town elections, people vote according to whom they choose. Some people who feel the candidate on the ballot isn't the right choice for either party, they seem to vote in that line. Looking at the last 3 elections, not everyone voted for every position, meaning that change in the ordinance will not change how people vote. If people truly believe people party vote. Most members of the board volunteered to do so because they care about this town. Most also do so while holding down full-time jobs and raising families. Changing this ordinance would make candidates need to campaign more, which while I have time to do so, many do not. We could lose valuable members of these boards who carve out enough time to serve their town, but would not be able to spend weeks campaigning. Changing this ordinance could change the balance of the board with one party having control. Is changing the ordinance worth risking equal representation for both parties? Doing a quick research, I found that Griswold, Plainfield, Lisbon, Volantown, and Andover all have the vote for 2 on the ballot. The public has made comments about keeping the board balanced. If by chance you decide to change this ordinance, there are a few towns that allow you to vote for 3 members, but not more than 2 from the same political party to keep that balance. Preston being this example. I believe that the people's right to vote and right to run. However, I also believe that the balance would hate to lose valuable members. In this hour, any board cannot dedicate time to the campaign. I hope when you first Selectman Carlson and Selectwoman Porter consider this change, that you will consider the opinions of the town, as you always do, and make a decision that suits the town and the Board of Education best. Whether this goes to referendum or town meeting, I think of better ways to us to use taxpayer dollars rather than changing an ordinance that is not a priority or that even needs changing. That's it.
Thanks, Bob.
Jeez. Next week, War and Peace.
So I'll,
Are we going to take public comments first?
Yeah,
before we
so-
discuss?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
before us?
Yes, because that's public comment.
yeah,
So
that's fine.
if there's anyone that wants to speak online or in person, please do so. Any comments?
No.
Jim?
Hi, this is Winona. I'm on the Board of Finance. And so I have a quick question if Brett could re-explain his position on the Board of Finance and Carl's specific position. Your mic is not that great, so I wasn't able to hear everything that you were saying.
So regarding that position, it's pretty much like the Board of Ed, where only when there is a vacancy, which makes that spot in a separate category, can you vote for one from the normal full term and one from the vacancy. So the wording is, at each such election, no elector shall vote for more than one member of said board for the same term. So that's where in different occasions, we've seen people be able to vote for more members on the Board of Finance because they fell in a different category because it wasn't quite the same term. But for instance, this year, they're both open spots are for the same term. So you'd only be able to nominate for one by a party and vote for one as a resident, not vote for both. So you're represented.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So a couple of things I wanted to point out was that especially your slide, Brett, you mentioned basically that the unaffiliated in our town, which is about 40% of the voters, are probably what I would call disenfranchised because this is a two-party system. But speaking to the Board of Finance specifically, which I am an alternate member, it's a 6-board committee, 3 of which are unaffiliated. So I just want to point out that the unaffiliated party, if that's what you want to call it, does have significant representation in this town. And I don't think either the DTC or the RTC is out to not choose to endorse unaffiliated candidates if those are in fact the best candidates for the position. Tula mentioned in her letter that there's a number of open positions. Right now, there's over 20 open seats on committees and boards in our town, many of which are appointed, not even elected, and we can't get bodies to fill those seats. And that's something that I've seen every election cycle is it's difficult to get people to even fill a slate, never mind really passionately run and fill a position. Every single position on every board and committee in this town takes a lot of time. There are a lot of meetings, it's a lot of personal time, and it's a commitment to be involved. I certainly would not want to see any change that would require more work or more effort to get people to want to sign up and want to participate. Campaigning takes a lot of energy and a lot of time and sometimes money. I believe that there's some offices in town where the folks who have ran on their own dollars. That's not something that I think is inviting to get additional people to participate. So I would like to see us kind of think about ways to get more people involved as opposed to potentially putting up more blockers to not have people involved. And I have not seen where there's been people who want to run and they can't because there's not enough spots on the ballot. So I don't feel like now is a time to do this. Everyone's kind of said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't even think we're there yet. I just don't see that this is a need currently. Thank you.
Thanks, Winona. Jim?
I've been thinking about it a little bit. I think that we need the two-party system and equal representation for the reasons that many people have said already. But I think one way around this to make both people happy, or both sides happy, would be to make this part of the primary system, where the two Democrats and Republicans can nominate as many as they want, and let the primary system pare it down to 2. That way, the townspeople get a say in who's going to be on the board instead of having a select few people pick them.
So regarding that quickly, so with a caucus of the Republican Party, that is pretty much
No,
similar.
because the whole town doesn't go to that meeting.
So we don't in Connecticut, you don't vote for other parties in primaries.
That's fine. You can have Republican primary, like the Democrat primary, whatever you want. But let that primary tear it down. Don't let the three people at the meeting tear it down.
Okay.
Any other comment online?
Megan?
Hi, Megan McCarthy. And I want to thank all of the different government officials and volunteers and members of the Board of Education who've sent in comments. And I wholeheartedly think that we should, first of all, take their perspective seriously, since they are the ones really in the trenches. And second of all, in listening to this today, I think the presentation that for the Board of Education in particular, to say that it's not currently a balanced board is clearly a fallacy, because just because there's a circumstance under which the board might end up being not balanced does not mean that it's not a balanced board most of the time under the current system. And it seems pretty clear that changing the ordinance would make it more likely to be an unbalanced board. And I think now more than ever, there is a need to keep partisan politics out of issues that affect the whole town. And so I agree with those who have sent in comments before, but the best way to do that is to do everything that we can to maintain bipartisanship. And yeah, I agree with all the comments that if it's not broken, don't fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online? Anybody else here? Steph?
Good evening, Stephanie Mastriani, Hangman Hill Road. Tonight, you've heard from a number of elected officials, many from the Board of Education. In fact, you've heard from members of both major parties. That alone demonstrates that this is not a partisan issue. I stand before you tonight also as a member of the Board of Education, but one with a differing opinion. This ordinance is not about unbalancing a board, making a supermajority, threatening a two-party system, or even overcomplicating things. This change will do nothing to change the rules of minority representation, which is actually how our board is supposed to be structured. We are not a balanced board by ordinance, like, for example, our Economic Development Commission. This change is simply about allowing residents the potential for more options and choice in selecting who will represent them. Its unintended consequence may be that it creates more competition and forces those of us that are elected to be more accountable to the residents whom we represent. Admittedly, as someone who holds a seat, it makes me a little nervous, but that isn't a reason not to support it. You have heard from people who are concerned that people might be voted onto the board with opinions differing from their own. You have heard about the importance of our two-party system. You have heard that board members who face opposition may not want to run if they have to campaign. You have even heard that we shouldn't bother because there aren't enough people interested in running anyway. I would suggest that none of these are things that should be considered here. The only thing that should be considered is making sure that the voters of North Stonington have access to the most options in deciding who they want to represent them and allowing their vote to have maximum impact. After all, voting is at the core of our democracy. Social media has been set on fire by this agenda item. One commenter even suggested that it's a conflict of interest for Selectman Mastriani to vote. Seemingly that comment was made because he is my husband and I am on the Board of Education. That's not how a conflict of interest is defined, and I stand to be as vulnerable as any other board member if this ordinance passes. This is not about an agenda or personal gain. It's simply the right thing to do in order to empower the voters of our town. Change is scary and can make people uncomfortable. It doesn't mean we should stay stagnant, though. In 2021, Mr. Mastriani, not yet a selectman, proposed an ordinance change. You will recall that it was also met by concerns of many people. That change actually made him more vulnerable as he prepared to run for a selectman seat. He would have competition in the general election rather than be seated automatically after receiving party endorsement. Making that change was the right thing to do by the people of North Stonington, and this one is as well. Nothing earth-shattering happened as a result of that ordinance change. That first year, the Democrats were able to make good use of the new ordinance and run 2 candidates, giving the town 3 options for 2 seats. Candidates had to campaign and voters were able to make their choice. This ordinance will simply create another opportunity for that. If there are no additional people that choose to run, so be it. If parties don't want to endorse more candidates, they don't have to. No harm is done. But if the conditions are right, an opportunity has been created for more voter choice, for greater access, and that's a total win. My only ask of you is that when you do vote on this ordinance, that you simply vote to move this to a town meeting so that all registered voters in town, not just elected officials, have the opportunity to weigh in on how they feel about a change that could affect the impact of their vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Carl? Did you want to, Brent? Okay.
Carl Johnston, 8B Ruderman Road. As being announced as one of the gentlemen in trouble here, I'd be more afraid of having somebody have to pick between me or the other gentleman. And being that he is more educated on the situation, I would hate to have to say that I took his seat and had him off the board. I would rather see both of us stay on the board. So I don't know how to address it other than watch what's going on, and if I have to, give the seat up so that the gentleman that deserves the seat should be there. So if this particular ordinance that Brett is proposing would help that so that everybody that wanted me and whoever else on the board can pick them, then I'm for it. But I still don't think they should be, it shouldn't divide or be able to allow more of one party on the other. And I really don't know how to explain that.
Carl, I just want to say, don't shortchange yourself. All 8 people on the Board of Finance are very valuable, not one more than the other. You all have an awful lot that you give to that board, and I appreciate everything that you do. So I think you're cutting yourself short there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Brett?
Brett, turn Brent Woodward, Yabucks Valley. I heard about this morning, so I'm not coming with an opinion at all. Matter of fact, I came with 4 questions and now I have 40 questions. This was kind of about as clear as mud for somebody, a non-student, of what you were talking about. Don't take that personally. Okay. Let me just run through a couple of questions, high-level questions. How many ordinances would we change? One? We just make one new ordinance?
So we'd have to do 2 ordinances, one for the
Okay,
Board of
that's-
Finance and one for the Board of Education.
I didn't hear any mention of planning and zoning.
So planning and zoning doesn't fall under this. Planning and zoning, you're able to vote for all members that are up for election.
Is that true with the rest of the boards and commissions
Um,
that I
for-
didn't hear about?
So EDC is an ordinance that was put in to make it a balanced board. But all the other major boards that you don't hear about, so Selectmen, Board of Ed, not Board of Ed, Planning and Zoning are that way. So if there's four spots available on Planning and Zoning, you get to vote for 4 members.
Would the ordinance address every board and commission or just these 2?
It would address these 2 because they're separate state statutes.
Could this result in either of these 2 boards being all the same party?
No, so minority representation still plays a role.
Sort of slip through. Like that.
Yeah, so that is in place as of now.
Are any of the other 168 similar to this?
The
I
towns,
heard a couple, yeah.
yeah, there's many towns that vote for all members. Stonington's one, that's right next door.
I heard first precedent from you.
So Preston is one, yes.
But then I heard in the literature, 4 more towns. Couldn't quite figure out what those 4 towns.
So those other towns have not changed anything and still vote for half the members.
Is there any, probably isn't any quick and easy way of getting information on this. So is there any chance I could lean on the Board of Selectmen to put something together early on before we get close to this? Because I think you're going to be debating this. And I'd like to know particulars. I think you got a lot of that stuff. And for me to go off and try to figure out how this is all done, I don't want to say it was a waste of my time, but seeing how you probably have all the literature, it's something be made available to the public.
Yeah, I can put something together. I mean, and that's what it would happen for our next meeting also
Okay, well
is
then,
if there's an actual ordinance change, there would be the ordinance change with backup.
okay. When would that happen?
So,
I hate to get to those meetings and get that. Then I feel like I shortchanged myself because I haven't done due diligence. I'd like to get it early. Any chance of that?
there is
Sounds like it.
there is a chance of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have someone online. Keith? Keith online?
Heath, you can comment next.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. So Heath Dugas, Chester, Maine. So I've been on the Rec Commission for the last few years and more recently appointed to the EDC as an alternate. I did intend to be there in person, but I'm a bit under the weather, so I chose to be a little cautious and not potentially infect all of you nice people. But so I had prepared a letter. I almost sent it to Bob. I wanted to be here online to read it. I edited it while we were going because Brett kind of covered some of the things I was going to cover. But I've heard from many people, and some of which even via letters and public comment, some of who I consider friends, and we notice it's both Democrats and Republicans here. That their biggest concern with the proposed ordinance change is the risk of losing this, quote unquote, balanced board. I do think it's worth reiterating, as Brett mentioned, the Board of Ed is not currently balanced, not by ordinance or even in practice today. It's minority representation, and the current ordinance limits the number of members of a party to 5 currently, not the 4 that we keep talking about. So as we know, in most elections, there is no competition for any of the 4 candidates nominated by the 2 major parties, which does end up resulting in a board that has representation of 4 candidates endorsed by each party. And again, in both cases, it's the party, the nominees are chosen by a small group of people, whether it's the Republican caucus, whoever shows up that day, or the DTC, and they're less than 20 people. So Brett did touch on this, but I want to drill down a little bit on what happens when someone who is not endorsed by either the Republicans nor the Democrats wants to run, such as one of our large number of unaffiliated voters. So they do have 2 options. This was slightly touched upon. One is they can seek nomination from the Republicans or the Democrats. This is an option and has been done in the past, specifically on other boards, and we talked about them. I know some, Carl and Gary are there today. But generally, that's only done by a party when that party does not have someone in their party that is interested, right? So then the second option is this nominating petition. And if they file the pertinent paperwork with the state and the town and then obtain the required number of signatures, as Brett mentioned, on the nominating petition, they can appear on the ballot outside of the 2 major parties. So the issue voters will face with this current ordinance when a third-party nomination appears on the ballot is this. In order to vote for a candidate not nominated by their party, a voter cannot also vote for the 2 candidates nominated by their party. So under the proposed ordinance change, a voter could vote for their party's nominees plus 1 or 2 candidates not endorsed by their party, as an example. So by design, third-party candidates, or those really not nominated by either of the 2 major parties, generally do not have good odds of being elected. The proposed change in the town ordinance is all about giving voters more choices, a choice to vote for up to 4 seats per election, which is equal to the number of seats available in the given election. As we heard previously with Brent Woodward's questions, for many other boards in town, voters can already vote for as many candidates as there are openings. Now, I will say it is really easy to see why some members of both of the currently represented parties prefer to keep the status quo. However, in a town where we have such large range of registered voters, where the largest number of voters are, where there's a significantly a large number of voters who are unaffiliated or independent, voter choice is extremely important. A system where a handful of people decide who gets elected should be revisited. Contrary to the arguments we've heard from both the right and the left, the current system is in fact not ideal, and allowing more choices is in fact best for our voters and our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath. Judy May.
Hi, Judy May, Norwich Wesley Road. I actually have a question from Sarah Nelson, who had to leave. She said that you stated that the DTC decides their nominations by less than 20 people, but the RTC does it by the number of registered voters. Do you have to be in person at the caucus for the RTC to vote?
Yes, so that is advertised in the paper and open to residents, registered Republicans. So in my history being involved, that caucus has ranged from 10, 20 people to 150 people. We've never had all 1,100 show up, but we've had some that we had to expand the space we were in, and people were outside and coming in to vote. But it is open to every registered Republican to come make that choice.
And that was her next question. What's the average number of people for the average number of participants in a caucus?
So I will tell you, it depends. There is no average because it depends on how contentious some of these races are. So when there aren't numerous people running for a spot, there is lower attendance because they understand there doesn't need to be a higher representation.
And going back to Brent, I think he asked the question about other towns. You had mentioned Preston. Preston does have you can vote for 3, no more than 2 in one
party.
One party. However, I did look up the 2023 Board of Education elections across the state of Connecticut, and there are 47 towns. I actually made you guys a copy. 47 towns that do only the 2. You can only vote for 2. There are 8 towns that do it the way that Preston does it, but the majority of the towns do it where you can only vote for a maximum of 2. I made you guys each a copy of 10.
Thank you. John?
John Gatcho, Norwich Wesley Road. I have one question. Keith brought up. What in the ordinance is going to help our independents or unaffiliated get on the ballot? Are they still going to have to petition?
So
Take it on, so that is he still going to have to go through the process he's going through now, or is there going to be a change to make it easier for them to get on the ballot?
So there's no way to make it easier for them to get on the ballot, but it will be easier for them to get elected,
to get votes,
because you're not beholden to your one party vote. And really, the way it's set up now, for someone to really win, and some of the comments I have rebuttals for, but we don't need to go into all that today because there are some inaccuracies that were presented. There are a lot of party line voters. Like I said, I've been involved with voting in this town for 18 years, intricately involved with it. And when you do run the numbers over the history, and even within the last 3 years, party line voters in unaffiliated, it is pretty consistent. So it is, to Heath's point, it is extremely difficult for an unaffiliated petitioning candidate to win an election in North Stonington and to be seated on the board. And I will tell you that it was brought up, yes, you can go and ask the Republicans or Democrats to vote for you. But like Heath did mention, 99% of the time, and I can speak on the Republican Party, You can only get that endorsement if there isn't a Republican looking to run for that position. Otherwise, you have to get about 70% of the vote after there is no registered Republican looking to run for that election. So all it is opening up the choices. In regarding the Preston comment, I am more than open of having no more than 4 members from one party in that statute. That's why I wanted this as a discussion, because to me, it's more about the voting. So Preston's is a prime example of how it could work. And that's why I brought the sample ballot. And that's the one that says Board of Education, 3 to be elected, not more than 2 from one party. So vote for up to 3. So right off I go to a lot of the meetings in the other towns. I love how clear this is right off the bat. So and you don't waste your vote voting for 3 members from one party. So as you can see on the sample ballot from 2023, there were 3 Republicans and two Democrats that ran. So you know off the bat that you can only vote for 2 of those members and then 1 from another party, whether that be if you are Republican voting, you can vote for your 2 Republicans and one of the Democrats. If there was a petitioning candidate, you can vote for your party and then the other person. So I want to be clear that I'm not presenting anything to try to make this board one-sided, but we do need to clarify a lot of those comments out there that saying this is a balanced board. It is not a balanced board. If that's something the town wants, that's a whole nother ordinance to put in, but it could be something that we add in here for the Board of Education side to say no more than 4 members from one party.
Chris Anderson?
Good evening. Chris Anderson, I've been here since 1996 on Miller Road. One thing that I've heard from most people, and thank you for explaining everything, Brett, about what exists and what is proposed. I'm still not sure what exists because I've been here for a long time and I always thought that they were all balanced boards. But what I've heard from most people is the people that seem to appreciate a balanced board and maintaining a balanced board. So perhaps the ordinance change should be to make them balanced boards. My second point would be that being here for so long, I've had a chance to see how the Board of Selectmen have worked and how the Board of Education has worked and how the Board of Finance has worked and how they've worked together and how they've worked diametrically opposed. And I would say in the last 5-10 years, though, we've had some dedicated, wonderful people that have worked on all those boards in the system that we have it in. That's done great things for this town, and I don't know why we'd want to change it. Because and I understand that change can be good, and there's a sense of unfairness to certain people that are unaffiliated or but I just think that I know within the Democratic Town Committee there's a process where they can endorse an unaffiliated person for a position or an independent person. I don't know within the Republican Party if you have the ability to do that within the caucus. I know the Democratic Town Committee used to have a caucus, but because of the fact that 10 to 12 people or maybe 100 people would show up at any given time, I think they eliminated that process. But I don't like to say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I just think that just changing for the sake of change, I don't think is a good idea. And I'd hate, I think we do good. We've done a good job with what we have.
Thank you, Chris. Anything else online, Suzanne?
No.
Anybody else here like to speak? Okay, so I think we should table this discussion for.
Do I get to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. I gave you a chance earlier.
Yeah, and
So get my back up.
I would like to have a brief discussion. So instead of tabling and then we have to, so we don't get to talk between
So go ahead.
meetings.
We can talk.
Okay. Thank you. So just a couple of thoughts. I think that the three of us have gotten to know each other really well over the last several years. I don't for one second believe any ill intent in this. I do think that the timing might make some people a little bit anxious and sensitive, given the fact that this administration's been in office for 24 hours and we're asking to change ordinances. So I just want you to understand where some of that chatter and some of those feelings have come from, right? So that aside, I wish to God that we had people beating down the door, lining up, wanting to run for office. We just don't have that. Having been in town politics for about on and off 10 years now, the DTC has absolutely endorsed independent, unaffiliated people routinely. We have a really decent showing at our endorsement meetings. We have a lot of thoughtful questions and they're interviewed. They're expected to tell us why they are the best candidate and we should endorse them. To us, it really doesn't matter what party they come from. It's who will be able to represent that board and be engaged. I have great concern that this could be seen as just another barrier to getting people to commit and to run. I remember asking Tula one of the first times I ran for anything, I just didn't understand. I said at the end of the election, I said, I don't understand. Did I get in? Like, did I lose? And she goes, no, like it was an automatic, you got in. It's very difficult for the public to understand. In town politics for 10 years, I had to do so much research on this and talk to my colleagues as well to try and understand it. And when you said that the Preston ballot was like clear as day, I'm thinking, oh my God, no, that's not clear as day. I mean, the town resident is reading 3 to be elected, not more than 2 from any one party, vote for up to 3. Like at a quick glance, that can be really confusing. For me, it is the what ifs. We've mentioned balanced boards a lot tonight. And I understand that a true balanced board is not what we have right now. When I read our current ordinance, it does say 8 members, I'm speaking from the Board of Ed, 8 members, 4 for 2 years, 4 for 4 years. Those 4, though each of those 4, not more than 2 can be from any one party. I can see how people translate to that could be a balanced board. When you say that you want to put all of these people forward and give options, but that we can also put language in the ordinance that says that no more than 4 can come from one party, does that not negate what we've just asked the ordinance to be? So we're saying vote for as many as you want and your vote will get the people in that the people elect. But then we have to say, oop, nope, but not now because only 4 can be from one party. So does it not negate the ordinance change potentially to begin with?
No, because I think you're excluding the majority of the residents of town, which are the unaffiliated or independent. And I think that for them to have to come to a party to beg really to be on the board, is
are
not
people begging at RTC?
So I can tell you,
endorsed?
in all my years, we've never had a problem finding people for the Board of Education. Never once have we had a problem for Board of Education.
Yeah, no,
And Board of
I agree.
Finance, pretty similar. We have endorsed unaffiliated for Board of Finance mostly. But if there's someone that does come through in the Republicans, the unaffiliated is an unaffiliated. They're not a member of the party. And for them to actually win is difficult, but we've never had an issue for people running for selectmen, for people running for Board of Education, and mostly for Board of Finance, and planning and zoning, really. The other boards, yes, there are a lot of vacancies. Some people question why we have some of these other boards. But those major boards, no, we haven't. And just to touch on your time frame thing, Bob can hopefully can back me up on this. I've been asking and talking about this for years, and it's always not the right time. So before the last election, we're like, let's wait. And then I'm like, wait until after the new year. I'm not thinking that the presidential election would affect this. It didn't even cross my mind, because that's how strongly I feel that it's not a party issue.
I understand that that's not your intent.
But it's been talked about for years as a change when we changed some of the other ordinances for it.
I was just explaining why there may have been some increased sensitivity and anxieties.
And that is valid. I mean, my wife didn't say it in here, so people listening might not know she's from the opposite party of myself. So I understand what happened the other day for some members of our community. But I also feel that when we do talk about balanced boards, that sometimes we need to look at people's opinions outside of party lines, right? And how they feel about certain topics in town. And shouldn't our town represent, the boards and commissions represent the feeling of the community? We talk about, the power of the state over the federal government. We want states to decide certain things. All those things we talk about play a role here. So the members of the community, don't we want people that represent their feelings and have to, and my biggest thing is have to listen to the residents. So we can, on a board, and we all know about campaigning, except for Bob. But we understand what it's like to meet and talk to residents. And even to Bob's credit and our credit last term, even when we're not running against someone technically, we are still out in the community talking to people, standing at the transfer station, listening to people. I'd love more of that. I'd love the people on the Board of Education and others to almost have to do that. And it's not as a barrier, and everyone can do it in their own way, but we have to be held to a standard of what the residents want from us. And we have to be able to be voted on based on our record and what we contribute. And that's really the foundation of it. And you had Heath talking about how hard it is for an unaffiliated to be on, because what if, people align more with what they're talking about at elections? So maybe part of the process is that we don't do is, hey, we never have a chance to talk to the members running for the Board of Education of what they believe on before we vote. We used to have debates where we would have to debate, right, when we're running. Those are, with the system the way it's set up, those never have to happen. And this might rub some people the wrong way that spoke out and saying, hey, I don't want to have to campaign. I don't want to have to do that. Well, you're a public official. Like, that's why we're here. And that's how no taxation without representation. Like, you have to answer to those people. So if you don't have to campaign, or you don't ever have to listen, you can make any decision you want with no repercussions, only the repercussions from your endorsing committee. And that's, to me, where I struggle with some of this stuff. But regarding clarity, yes, to me, this is clear. I understand where you might not think it's clear, but I'm not against, like I said, I would like the residents to decide, and the residents at a town meeting decide, no, we don't want to vote. We don't want to change. And then that's the feeling of the community. And I have to say, and there's plenty of Republicans against this too. There's plenty of Republicans that are for it, that don't come and speak in favor of it. And I'm sure there's plenty of Democrats the same and unaffiliated. And I said to some the other day, hey, well, with this change, and a lot of the letters we got were from either registered Democrats that are on the Board of Education or a Republican that's on the board. Some people are like, well, we might lose seats. You know what? If that's how the town is feeling, and is that representative of the town, then that party loses seats, or we lose seats. As Republicans, we lose seats down the road. It's just the flavor of the community. But there are safeguards you can put in place if you want the balanced board, but we really don't. We don't have a balance. The Board of Education is not balanced currently. And after November, it might be balanced even differently. So if we don't want some of these things, then we maybe put in the balanced board, like Mr. Anderson said, because right now in November, one seat for that Board of Education is going to have to campaign if there's somebody running against them. They're going to. And why is it right for that one seat to have to campaign, but not the others? I don't think that's fair either.
Additional questions?
Not right now.
Any feedback, or I would love feedback if there's feedback about potentially changing, or where, if you're willing to send it at the next meeting to a town meeting, and it usually always goes to a town meeting, not a referendum. If there's anything you'd like me to look into, or write up something different about more balanced board, if people get the right to vote for many, like this is about a discussion, and I was taken back by some of the social media posts and being targeted, because that's not what this is about. This can affect my party just like any other party, just like it did when I ran first to change the selectmen's vote. So it really is about a discussion. If there's any changes or things you want me to look more into, I'm happy to do it, because Nicole, like you said, we've all got to know each other pretty well, and we work very well together for the best interest of the community. And that's one thing that, yes, I might be the chair of a Republican party, but I'm a selectman first and foremost. And once you're elected to this role and most of the other roles, you represent the whole community. You listen to every member of the community, and that's our job. So I take that very seriously. So when I see those comments, it really bothers me for the amount of time that I put into that. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, because that's how I feel.
So I think what would be helpful in to Brent's point is that if you could create kind of like that one pager, right? So, and I think giving different scenarios, like if this happened, then this would be the outcome. That might help the residents fully understand those what ifs. And if that kind of allays people's anxieties and fears about those what ifs, that might be helpful. I think when I read the ordinances and the statutes, it can be very overwhelming, and it almost sounds like it's just talking in circles. And so I think putting it into clear language and giving scenarios of how it would benefit, but then with that, what are some of the potential consequences that could happen because of it? And if there are consequences and that bothers people, and that would prevent somebody from voting against it, then what is the language that we could possibly put into a new ordinance that would prevent those what ifs that make people nervous? So that, to me, I think would be helpful in further discussion, and then if it ends up going to a town meeting.
Yeah, and I agree. When you read through it, a lot of them are confusing. When you read state statute, the same thing. And actually, when you quoted our ordinance now, or our voting, the way we vote now, I did reach out and talk to Antoinette today, because that is somewhat inaccurate and confusing. So where it says you vote for two members for 2-year terms and then 4-year terms. So that was when the act was first enacted,
yes, that's
back
getting
in
it started.
1920,
You're right.
whatever it was.
You're right.
Right now, that's not how it is. So it is confusing. So if people go to look up our website is very confusing on how voting happens.
Yeah. So I
So-
think clarifying that for people and simplifying it is going to be the best approach forward.
Okay, are you clear on it's not a balanced board, meaning we can have up to 5 of one party?
I
Okay.
am.
Okay. So I think that in the times we have now, the political times, it's always like each party is wondering what's the other party up to? You know, why is one party proposing it? And I wonder if it was proposed by the Democrats, if the Republicans would have had the same fear of like, what are they up to? Right? I think that's the way the world we live in now. What's the other party doing? We also, I think we can agree that not everyone that has a particular letter after the name is to the same degree. Different Republicans are farther right than other Republicans. Different Democrats are farther left than other Democrats. I would say there's probably unaffiliated voters and independent voters that are farther right than some Republicans and farther left than some Democrats. I think the fear is that if someone's thinking, well, what are they up to, right? Is the fear that possibly if we can vote for 4 and a party is able to find 2 independents or 2 unaffiliates that are more in line with their way of thinking, either farther left or farther right, and they can get those people on, so you could have 4 Republicans and 1 very conservative independent or conservative, or 1 very liberal independent or unaffiliated. Does that skew the board? And I think that's the fear, is the unknown. So we know that there's going to be 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, the chances are they're gonna typically get on. But if you can vote for 2 more, and it's a far right-leaning independent or far left-leaning unaffiliated, that's how the board's going to be unscrewed. Because even though they're not in there under the name Republican or Democrat, you know how they lean. I like the fact that when I come to a Board of Finance meeting, I couldn't tell you. If I was new to town, I could not tell you who in the Board of Finance and what party, because they all seem, as I think we do, and I think all the boards in town seem to want to do what's best for the town, not what's best for their party. I think Brett just mentioned that. He's here as a selectman first, party member second. I think that's how we all should operate, no matter what's happening in Washington, even what's happening on the state level, but on the town level, we hear what's best for the residents, right? And we work for all the residents. So I think it's the fear of the unknown. What would happen if there's 4 far right Republicans on the Board of Ed and 1 far right independent? What does that do to the board, and vice versa with the liberal? So I think that's the fear of not knowing how it would turn
I
out.
agree.
And I think so we'll have another discussion at the next meeting, and we can decide to vote to, again, we're not voting to approve the ordinance. We're voting to send it to a town meeting to have the town actually vote. And if as Brett's point is, you want to hear the most voices, you want to hear give most people the opportunity to vote. And we say that it's not fair that a small group of Republicans or a small group of Democrats decide on an issue, then wouldn't we be, if we didn't vote to send it to a town meeting, wouldn't we be guilty of the same thing? So that's my feeling.
How about on the Board of Finance?
I think that's a different situation. I don't think even though you put them together, I think the Board of Finance situation is very different than the Board of Education situation. I could be wrong, but I think and again, as you just said, you need to study this to become, and I'm not typically studying how voting goes. As you said, I've been lucky enough to not have an opponent ever, but it could be changing in November. We'll see. But it's not something you look at and study all the time. What would happen if? At least I don't. So I think that another meeting would make sense, and I think more explanation to Brent's point to more an easier politics 101. Bring it down to the easiest steps that we can all understand what the parameters are and what the outcomes could be. I really think in all cases, I don't think, if I remember right, when Brett brought up the Board of Selectmen change 3 or 4 years ago, I think we were at the gymatorium. I think Tula spoke, I think you spoke, and other people spoke against it. It almost came back to haunt you because then you had 2 Democrats running against Republicans. So what the fear is of that evening, what the fear is tonight, how this could all work out, it may be totally different if it goes into play. But I also agree that as Chris Anderson mentioned, for the last 3, 4, 5 years, our boards have worked very well together. Yeah. And I think we have an amazing number of people that work on our boards, that volunteer their time, different people at the different levels. But I think it's, I can see an argument on both sides of the issue. That's all. And I think tonight would be a good time to rest it. I did give you a chance to speak, so sorry. Rest it for this evening, bring it back again at the next meeting and vote whether we want to send to a town meeting or not. Good?
I'm good.
All right. Does anybody else want to say anything before we close this topic? No? Perfect. And thank you for all those that wrote in and spoke. I appreciate hearing all the opinions. Next, IT position. Okay. So where are we? What do we know tonight that we didn't know 2 weeks ago? What's new? So we know that the Board of Education is fairly comfortable with what they have right now with Lauren and with Greg Comia as the technician. Again, that's as of today, they're comfortable. Secondly, if you watch the Board of Education meeting, which happened the night after our meeting, you saw they had a very aggressive 3-year plan, maybe even a 5-year plan on purchasing of computers, whiteboards, tablets, Chromebooks, and so on. I have a feeling that the IT situation on the Board of Ed side, the school side, is a much bigger IT situation, not positive, negative, just that the package itself is much bigger than the town hall package. However, I don't think it's more important. I got called into a meeting of the town hall employees right after the Board of Selectmen. They watched it, and then they told other ones to watch it, and they felt that our board was doing them a disservice by not identifying the needs of the town hall employees and how 98% of the revenue that comes in this town comes through the town hall, whether it be the tax collector's office, the town clerk, the land use office. And I think it was very important them to be heard, and that's why they asked me to come and talk to them on, don't treat us like this isn't important. Let's, we want to get this, we need people now. Suzanne's working IT anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day, it seems, fixing somebody's computer. Again, there's another glitch today in the land use office. There seems to be something always going on in the town clerk's office. And we know we have some antiquated equipment. So here's my thought is, we talked about a savings to the taxpayer, and I don't know if we got a director and we paid, say, 125 and we paid 40% of that on the town side and 60% on the school side, just to throw a number out there. I don't know if we'd see this person, he or she, 40% of the time, knowing what the school wants to get done over there. And I don't want to pay for 40% of someone's salary and see them 10% of the time. Plus, we have 6 buildings to talk about. We've got 2 buildings at Town Hall. We have 2 town public works buildings. We have a senior center, 7 buildings. We have the Parks and Rec building and the ECS building. There's a lot to do on our side of the street, and it's spread out. It's not just in the 2 buildings of the school. My feeling is that I have trouble supporting it. It looked good on paper saying, yeah, we both needed IT at the same time. Let's look at getting a director. And I think we vetted that out somewhat. But I think now it's important to address the situation, bring in a IT manager like we had, and then down the road is 6 months from now, or if the school 6 months from now says it's not working with Lauren, it's not working with our technician. And if we happen to be lucky enough to hire a really good IT manager, maybe that person could be elevated at that time to a director's position. But right now, paying 40%, we'll say, of that salary, and then bringing in a technician in to do our day-to-day fixing the computers, fixing the errors, fixing the broken keyboard, and so on. I got a quote from a third party that would be willing to work 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. If I had them work 3 hours a day, 5 days a week with no benefits, it's still $50,700 for the year. It's $65 an hour because they're not taking benefits. So I'd be getting somebody 15 hours a week for $50,000 on top of paying a direct part of a director's. So now we're up probably over $100,000 overall. To me, that's not a savings when we're paying $74,000 for an IT manager.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do, in my opinion, is post the job as it was, get a person in place, have it open, and I'd like to see possibly to have, if you want to talk to Mike Stock about being on the hiring and the interview committee, because he knows a lot more about computers than I do. But I think if we can get somebody in place and then 6 months from now, look at it again. If the Board of Ed says we are not happy with the way it's working, maybe if it's a good candidate, bring he or she up to another level, to the director's level at that point, and then talk about bringing in technicians. But we have a major problem happening at Town Hall right now with broken computers. And during tax season, you can't afford to have the tax collector's computer go down. So that's just my thought of where we are with this. I'd love to have feedback from the two of you.
So what currently was the salary range on that?
Was it
The
74?
present one, it's around 74,000.
And then what's our average cost on benefits?
Depends if it's family or.
I know, but
individual.
like, do we have an average? Is it
Suzanne,
20,000,
do you know?
30,000?
I think it's about 23 for spouse, for employee and spouse.
So upwards if it's family and less. But we're looking about $100,000.
So I was never not in favor of posting for a full-time person for the town. I think that it kind of hinged on what the Board of Ed wanted to do. And if the Board of Ed is satisfied and wants to move forward with their current situation, then that changes our situation. And I would say, and would be in favor of posting for another manager position. Same as is, just post it, get somebody in ASAP. But I was not in favor of trying to make up hours here and there with two different consultants. I was always in favor of full-time coverage for the town. The only thing I was saying is that we could back off of that 74,000 IT manager, make it more of a 5-day-a-week, 40-hour boots on the ground in town, rotating, like aggressively and proactively going to every single building that we have, checking to see how things are. And then that shared IT director would be looking at things like cybersecurity and policy work and making sure that we're safe versus making sure that our systems are running. So if what we hear, Board of Ed is kind of satisfied with where they're at right now, then I am in favor of posting for the IT manager tomorrow. And you're right, if in the future Board of Ed decides that that's not working for them anymore, then we can look at taking somebody. If that person is the right person, okay. If not, is there something that we can share and that director would be over the entire town and school, but each would still have their boots on the ground full-time. I don't think that we can get away with any kind of part-time. I think it clearly, listen, the town hall employees know that I work full-time, but I had people reaching out to me. I felt bad that I could not get in. They asked me to come on in and talk to them. I just can't usually do that during a work day. They feel very strongly that a part-time boots on the ground is not going to be sufficient. It makes everybody very nervous.
I think that even if we hired a 19 manager like we had, and I think we were less than awed by what we had in the past.
Yeah.
I think that person has to be boots on the ground. It has to be over at this point, looking at the whole picture.
The whole picture.
But also be able to go down and at the lowest level and fix a keyboard that's not working or
Yeah.
change something out.
Yeah, it has to be, getting the right candidate in there is key. It's got to have a little bit of both. It's got to be somebody that can look at cybersecurity for us, but also, you're right, switch out the keyboard.
One thing that the school started before we changed and we let our person go, they started doing, I think it was monthly meetings with the school and the town. And I think there was crossover and we're actually made sense. If we had all the right people in place,
yeah.
If everyone was still here that was there then, they were doing the right job, it made sense to cross over. Because then if we did have an issue where somebody was on vacation, somebody was out, we could bring somebody over and vice versa. So I think that communication can't stop. And I think through that communication, we might find 6 months from now, a year from now, that we should elevate it to a director and, as you say, boots on the ground people on both buildings. But I think at this point, it's a priority to get us fixed. They seem to be fixed for now over there. We're not.
Yeah. And I know your observations in the past was that there might not be a need for somebody 40 hours and that, but I think that may have been the people in the role and not being as proactive as maybe we could have been. but there's nothing, there's nothing like having your computer go down in the middle of the day and be just dead in the water with what you can do. And if that happens to be the town clerk or the tax clerk, that's huge. I do think that we need to have full coverage across the board.
And I'll agree with you and I'd have to look at that job description again, so we could, I wish we had it here tonight, so we can talk about it before we just repost, because if they are doing the GIS and some of the other stuff that we used to have in there, then I agree with you. But if we take that stuff out, I don't know if we need someone 40 hours a week based on what they've been doing with even the past two people that we had. There was a lot of downtime. And I know a lot of it is reactionary. Something breaks, we're going to fix it. I understand that. But if that job description does have the GIS and all the stuff that used to be done by that position, then I'm all for it. But I think we also need to be very selective and not just reactionary and hire someone to put in that place. For now, we need to find someone that will do the job that it is, because it's not a low paying job. It's not a high paying job in regards to IT, but getting out at 4:30 is nice and all those things. But if that GIS, do you know if that's still in that job description? And we just basically, with the last few, said, no, don't worry about that.
It's still in the description. It just hasn't been, they haven't been active on that, nor have they been proactive, as you said, Nicole, going to the other buildings and saying, I mean, we've got some serious issues in some of our other buildings.
Yeah.
And not going there because it's comfortable to sit upstairs on in our building.
Right. And I feel fully confident with Sue keeping an eye on and managing that team.
Yeah.
So in the past, I think we've let things slide a little bit on some of that stuff. But as soon as you got put into place, I know we straightened up a lot of those things, and you had your hands full with things before. And that was kind of, what are they doing up in that room when all these other things are breaking down and not being planned out? So I do think it's based on finding that right person and making sure, because that GIS we started subbing out and all those things that ended up costing more than that job description. They were in that job description. We should be looking for someone that could do it. And if they don't have the access, we should be working on having them trained to be able to do it and invest in that
There's a
person
lot
to
of
do it.
crossover with what they do with like the town clerk with posting minutes, posting agendas. And also the updating websites. I had asked today from Alexis from Sustainable, hey, do you have anybody in place yet? Because I really need my website updated to what we want on it now. So when there's downtime, there's always that work, that kind of busy work to be done. I mean, even after the election, Brett, how long did it take before we had the results up there and things like
Well,
that?
there's still some that are missing.
And some of the boards weren't updated. But yeah, so I think there's work for someone who wants to seek it and be proactive, and then also thinking of the big picture and meeting with the school on a regular basis and saying, what are you doing? What are we doing? What can we do together? And maybe make it better for both of us. So my opinion is to get the right interview board. And that's why I'd like to see if you want to talk to Mike about even being on it.
Yeah.
The right interview board, get somebody in here, but it's got to be the right person, as Brett said. I can't have similar to what we've had in the recent past. So
No, I agree.
Mike Anderson has his hand up. I don't know if it.
is he apply for the job?
Yeah.
Mike Anderson, your hand up?
Yeah. I was just wanted to, like I was on the site today looking at, the Board of Finance stuff, and, we still have last year's mill rate up. We don't have the budget calendar updated. It's still from fiscal year 2024, things like that. So I just echo your point about this website needs to be updated, and there's probably a lot on that site that should be updated. So just my 2 cents.
Great. And again, it's a multi-faceted position, right? There's so much to do. And I think if you have the right person that wants to really grab hold of it and run with it, they're going to do those things. And I I'd love to have, if I say to Suzanne, where is so-and-so today? She says, oh, she's over at the fire company, or he's over at the senior center. Great, that's where they should be, fixing that issue, or looking at what they can make better over there. So anyway, I'd like to, if it's okay, to motion to post this job and try to be all inclusive, as you said, Brett, bring the stuff back in that maybe is not there. I think we've started saying, okay, maybe Jen can do this and maybe somebody else can do that and Suzanne can do this. And no, it should be this position doing this.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity for you to look at the job description and make sure that it's reflective of everything that we want? And then I just want to make sure that the current salary rate, the range, right? I'm sure there's a range because we don't know. Is
It's a
there a
union
range?
position, right?
So there's not a
Yeah.
range based on
No, it's a
experience
range.
level?
There's always a range.
Yeah. That is at least competitive and appropriate. And I don't need to be on that interview board. I'm not going to be helpful on that board, but on that interviewing.
And I wasn't gonna put you on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Know
So
my
I'll make
strengths.
that motion.
I know my
Okay,
strengths.
okay. So Brett motioned, you second, Nicole?
I do second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So Suzanne, tomorrow we review the job description, make sure it's right. We can send a copy to the selectmen and just give us a thumbs up to post it. We'll post it and start the interview process. And if you can talk to Mike, and if you have any suggestions on who you think you'd like to have on that board,
Yeah.
Let me know. It doesn't have to be a 5-member board, it can be 3.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Huh?
Thank you.
Well, you'll be one, Suzanne.
Yes.
You're not going to get out of it, unfortunately. So, all right. Old business, nothing on vacancies or appointments tonight. Is there any public comment on anything we spoke about tonight?
Michael's hand is still up. I don't know if he has.
Mike, is your hand still up for a reason, or did you just forget to take it down? Gary?
So also in the POCD is a proposed parking lot behind the town hall. Is there any active study or intent to fund that? Is that going forward?
No,
Thanks.
Yeah.
that was never brought up in the previous steep grant either, Gary, as was the one out here. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, the next Board of Selectmen meeting is February 4th. I'll go to the Board of Finance meeting on the 29th and do the appropriation for the fire company. All right, that's it. A motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourning at 8:34.